The motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, this is the so-called SPICE bill. This conference report is the same as the report for House Bill 1434 on page 1 of the calendar that was passed by temporarily just a few minutes ago. I think that there's been a lot of attention given to how serious the problems of synthetic marijuana are in a lot of communities around the state and how they have devastated a number of young people's lives and their families. So I won't spend much time on that, but I think it is important that we all know how this bill will treat that drug. And so I would like to walk everyone through just a few of the more important provisions of this bill. But before I do, I'd also like to mention that while there's a lot of bills that are very contentious and creates a lot of division, this is an example of where once there's a recognition of the seriousness of the problems created by this drug, everyone who was associated with it really came together and contributed. A number of members of this body, the senator from Bristol, senator from Spotsylvania, Augusta, James City County, Suffolk, Hanover, Botetourt, all of us are aware of how serious this was, and all of us, I think, worked together in a very productive fashion. So now the bill is really long, but the reason it's so long is because when you add another drug to the code, a number of other code sections are affected. For example, if you're caught with possession of certain drugs, you lose your ABC license. It affects your ability to get a concealed weapons permit. So a lot of code sections are affected, and that accounts for the length of the bill. The main part of the bill begins really on page 15. And at line 384, there's a definition for synthetic marijuana, and probably the more proper name is synthetic cannabinoids. And there are about 10 chemicals listed there that constitute this drug. Then on line 398 is where it is made unlawful to possess it, and possession becomes a Class 1 misdemeanor. On page 16 at the top on line 400 is where distribution or sale is a Class 6 felony. Class 1 misdemeanor, someone could be charged with up to 1 year in jail and a fine of up to $2,500. Distribution is a Class 6 felony, that's 1 to 10 years. And then there's a provision for manufacturing, which is a much more serious felony, punishable by 5 to 30 years. There's also an accommodation paragraph so that if someone, in conjunction with a couple of friends, buys the drug and then gives it to their friends at the request of their friends, that is not distribution, so that defense is there. There's also a provision dealing with designer drugs so that if someone creates a new compound similar to this and does so with the intent to circumvent the criminal penalties, that's also covered. And I would say probably that this is going to be more and more of a problem as new compounds are developed in order to evade our drug laws. There's also a provision for a first offender. So if a kid or a young adult makes a mistake, as they're wont to do sometimes, there is the opportunity for the court to have a deferred finding, and if everything goes well, the charge would be dropped later on. There is an emergency clause onto this bill, and this is very important to know so that we can get the word out in the communities that upon signing of the bill, this new crime will become effective. And then lastly, one of the more recent designer drugs now on the market, commonly known as bath salts, or there are a couple of chemical names on the back. They've been added as a Schedule I drug. On page 62, lines 1634 and 1635, they have a chemical name I can't begin to pronounce, but they're commonly known as MDPV and 4-MMC. Also, with respect to the synthetic cannabinoids, sale to a minor is a separate and distinct felony with a mandatory 2-year minimum. And sale on school grounds is a separate and distinct felony. So I hope I've given everyone a fair summary of the bill, and again, I move that we adopt the conference report.
Thanks, Senator.